How is this for you?
Very educational. Good learning experience. If you'd like me to talk about the actual assignment, prior to the assignment, the students had a really good background pretty much in all of the elements and principles. We've talked about those. They had used them in other artworks. So it was kind of leading up to this. The subject matter of the picture was only limited to two things. It must be original and it must be appropriate. The technique was to use small, short brush strokes or the pointillism, the dots, or they could use a combination of both to create more interest. Contrast was a big part of the painting, how we talked about how you create contrast with the use of color, with the use of shape, with the use of darks and lights next to each other. We talked about how to create a center of interest. They did need to have a foreground, middle ground, and background. That was part of the requirement. We talked about the different kinds of balance, asymmetrical, symmetrical, and radial, and they had their choice of using any of those. Prior to that, we had also discussed and looked at many examples of Impressionist artworks by Monet and Seurat, talking about how they use color, how to use two or more colors in a space to achieve the blending of color with the eye when you're looking at it from a distance. So that was a part of the assignment as well.
Was this an effective assessment for you?
Overall, it was. If you're asking me, I would consider this to be a 2 myself, because there were many, many other better examples that went home.
Yeah.
They created their drawings in class in their sketchbooks. After they finished their sketches, I gave individual feedback to every student. I did not say you should do this or you should change this. My suggestion was, here's some options. Think about it, use it, don't use it. I also had them exchange notebooks within their group, within their table, and ask them to give each other feedback on what you might change, what you might keep, what might make this better, and they did that.
Did the student actually write some kind of a response?
It's in their notebook,
Okay,
their
so
sketchbook.
that actually could have been a part of this showcase.
Yes.
Now, that's the question I was going to ask, if we include the kid's written word.
Then they would have a better understanding
Right.
of the level of the student, where the teacher had gone, and how the student pulled that information into themselves and produced a piece.
They needed to write a paragraph in their sketchbook explaining why they would either leave their drawing as it was based on the use of balance, contrast, variety, those things, or they needed to explain why they would change it based on suggestions that were given by their team members.
Based on what you heard, is there anything that you would do differently, and if so, what?
Somebody mentioned texture earlier. I think I might look more at that as having texture a part of the painting instead of kind of just flat.
This is what we've learned, I think. We've learned how to do a panel. We'll apply that knowledge in sessions that are smaller scale. You'll be able to move faster. We've learned how to read standards benchmarks in a different way now with student work on the table. We've learned some of the parameters of our discussions together in these panel review conversations. We've learned how to apply a conversational tool called the guideline rubric. We've learned some of the useful parts of coming to agreement about what we'll disregard and what we'll trade off in a sample. We've probably learned many, many other things as well, but those are the things that we're going to rely on when we come back after lunch and continue.